All right, friends, I am here with my fabulous friend Anne Molesky, and today we have kind of the bow on our conversation about rhythm arranging. And we've been talking about a lot of different things. We've been talking about rhythm arranging from the teacher perspective. We've been talking about it from the student perspective. We've been talking about all of the different ways that this idea of improvisation and arranging and composition, like all of the different ways that they can kind of work together. And we've also been looking at it from a couple different dimensions of very first experiences to what would be like a little bit more of a stretch. And today we're going to talk about stretching it a little bit more. I have a question that we can jump into if you want to, or anything that you want to kind of add to that.
No, I want to know your question now. I'm on the edge of
Well,
my seat.
this might be its own can of worms thing, but I noticed that you took the song Apple Tree, and if I understand you correctly, you're going to expand it further today. For some reason, you chose this song Apple Tree, and you knew in your pedagogy brain that Apple Tree would work for ta and TT in all of these 30 million different ways. So if I'm a teacher and I'm like, yes, I like this idea, I want to kind of try it out on my own after I've done Anne's idea, what are some of the things that I might want to think about if I want to kind of create an arrangement for students to create an arrangement of? Do you know what I mean? Because for the teacher makes it first on a structural level, and then kids do the actual arranging, right? So from the teacher perspective, how did you know that this would work?
So I think if you do a quick song analysis of Apple Tree, you see that the main rhythms, or the only rhythms rather, are TT and Ta. Okay, and so that's the first piece of it, and then the words Apple Tree are easily grabbed onto for students and easy to kind of put into its own manipulation structure, if you will. And so I think if you are like, well, where do I go? What song could I do this with? I think number one, you can look at what's already in your classroom. And I don't think it's necessarily finding a song that has the words that would easily work with this. I think it's more finding a song that you use in your classroom for a specific curricular purpose and extracting that section of the song. And if like the text doesn't lend itself as nicely as apple tree, tree, apple, or bee, bumble, bumble, bee, or whatever. Well, let's take bumblebee, as an example. So say I want to do this with bee, bee, bumblebee. Well, going like bee, bumble, bumblebee, like you could do that, or you could do like tree, honey, honey, like that type of thing. You can just find other related words. But what I tend to do is always start with speech, and we are talking specifically about rhythmic arranging, so we'll stick with that. Melodic arranging is a whole other bear. But I think starting with speech is the most accessible way for us as teachers and as for kids to get into this, because it feels less threatening than just grabbing a bunch of rhythms and trying to plug them in. It feels more playful, and it's easier to play around with a thing. So if you hear this process and you want to try it with what's happening in your classroom, I think that's the key. Like, think about the actual song, what it's about, what words could you take and kind of build into like this word bank of stuff to bring out some patterns for your kids to use. Is that where you thought I was going to go? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
So you're saying you use kind of your artistic lens. What are the words that I can pull? Or if there aren't words that I can pull, then what can I kind of approximate kind of close to this song? And then you're also using your curricular pedagogical lens of like, what's my focus? Why did I choose this song in the first place? And kind of the combination of those two, the curricular ped lens and the artistic divergent thinking on your own, with those two approaches, like the Venn diagram is something like this apple tree arrangement.
Yeah, and I think so there's a caveat to that too. So I had a student in my methods class who saw me do an activity like this and absolutely loved it. That's what I was about to say that sounds horrible. No, but he liked it. He thought it was really cool. He's like, oh, I didn't know elementary kids could do that. I guess that's why I went down that road. And I'm like, yes, because, he's a trumpet player. I can say this as a trumpet player. He was a trumpet player, and he's just like very like ready to be like a high school band director, orchestral trumpet player. I'm like, I've been there before. But anyway, he's like, kids can do this. I'm like, yes, they can. So he came up with his own, like, it was about ice cream. It escapes me whether it was a song or a rhyme, but then he wanted the kids to take like, ice cream flavors. And one of the things that he did, he was like, okay, give me your favorite type of ice cream. And so he got like chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, and he was playing with those, and he got strawberry, chocolate, and he like broke that up, and then he went vanilla. And I was like, ooh, interesting. Where is this going to go? My teacher hat was on, and he was trying to do something based off of 8th and 16th note combinations. And so strawberry, chocolate, but then vanilla has that anacrusis in it. And so it was just very interesting. And then we had this conversation about how, yes, ask your students to give you the things that they're then going to, mess around with to make their ostinati or their arrangement or whatever it might be. But you have to be really careful about what you choose in the end. So like another example would be like, vanilla. I'd be like, oh, that's really boring. That's plain. We don't want to use that today. That's a great idea, but we're just not going to use that one today. Knowing that it wouldn't work in the structures that I'm eventually going to use later on, right? Because maybe I don't use notation today, but I might later on. Okay, so you have to make that decision too. Like, what do they know? Where is it going ultimately? All that kind of stuff. The other thing that could happen is, what if a kid said rocky road, right? So that's the same as chocolate. So we only need one of those, right? So those, or not, or you can choose to have two of them. But those are all the types of things that you need to be thinking about in the teacher role as a teacher facilitator when you're bringing your students in for creative choices. Think about exactly what you need, what building blocks you do need to move forward into the activity if you're not giving them those at the onset.
Yeah. So if I were to take that activity and someone says rocky road, chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, right? Then we can still do all of those, like, and including vanilla, rocky road, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry was the last one. Yeah. And you do that over and over, right? And that becomes the ostinato, and that's like very fun. And that's where we can cap it on day one, because we're still getting the meter, right? And if you're putting it on body percussion, you're still getting the beat subdivision in here and everything like that. And then in the next class, you say, I was thinking about some of these flavors. Here are a few of what I heard. And just as the teacher, you kind of refine it to your curricular purpose. But starting big picture, and this is what you're saying, like starting big picture with student input and saying like, great, like everything is a correct answer, including vanilla, right? But because of the curricular focus at the end, vanilla won't be there for this lesson, right? And it doesn't mean that anything's wrong with vanilla, and we've still used vanilla. The other thing that I was thinking of as you were talking is you sent me a video of your kids the other day going, Belle, Tiana, Snow White.
I just say that all weekend.
Belle, Tiana, Snow White. Right? And how old is your oldest?
She'll be 6 this summer.
Okay, so a 5-year-old, it's not, the reason I say this is because I don't want people to hear Anne say, you're not allowed to use rhythms that they cannot identify with standardized Western notation, right? Or like kids can't do syncopation, or kids can't do an anacrusic rhythm, right? Because Belle, Tiana, Snow White, right? That Tiana in there, right? That is some syncopation, and your kids can figure out where that fits in the meter, right? And I know we're talking about, 70 million different things instead of the activities from today. But just as people are taking this and applying it to their classroom, there's an element of the notation doesn't matter. We have higher goals than the standardized Western notation. And also the notation is going to come in at some point and get linked and kind of merge through that. And so when I talk about, pulling out from what you've said, this idea of the artistic lens and this idea of the pedagogical lens, there's going to be a dance between those two in how we decide to move the activity and facilitate the activity forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said about how every answer is a correct answer, when you ask for the ideas, take all the ideas, try
You
all the
asked,
ideas.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, try all the ideas, and there's no like quality. And I like the way that you framed it. There's no like quality assignment necessarily. Even what I said maybe wouldn't be a first day thing. Like vanilla's boring, let's not use that. Like maybe don't crush everybody's spirits. Like right, like. But anyway, so I think that like try it out and do it, but then again, like as you're focusing in, if you ever even get to notation, maybe the point again, maybe this is a study B exercise and so it doesn't matter, right? So
There
it
it
all
is. Yeah.
depends on where you're going with it, what your end goal is in mind, which is why it's so important to have that end goal, right? But yeah, to your point, like the whole Belle Tiana Snow White, she was standing there like dancing and clapping the steady beat, right?
Yes.
And so exactly, she was fitting it into all of that. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
all right, cool.
I love it. That's it. That's a separate conversation too. But I think it's relevant here because as people do these activities, they're going to pull text from the song, and maybe the text that they pull for their rhythmic building blocks is not something that students are ready to read with standardized Western notation. And then the question is like, do I throw it out? Do I keep it in? And the answer is yes, you can do all of it and none of it. It just depends on the point. And that's kind of what I want to pull out of your answer as well, is it depends on your point.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Cool. All right. You ready?
Yes.
So I'll dive in with the conclusion of Apple Tree. So this really, I feel like, is not like groundbreaking. I feel like none of it's been groundbreaking because, again, we're looking at something, and much like we do with arranging and much like we do with our teaching, we're just adding teeny tiny pieces to it, right? So you said last time we chatted, this would be great for a program. So I want to begin with kind of like an informant's view, an informant's possibility, if you will. And so imagine that you have your first grade parents all gathered for a PTA program. It's your night. You have 30 minutes. You're going to share like 4 activities that you've been doing in your classroom. And the first is Apple Tree. So why not begin with the students sitting like on the stage or whatever, maybe just one of your 4 classes or whatever it might be, right? And then having them play Apple Tree. The first kid who gets out, oh man, walks over to whatever your dough is for that song on a bass bar or maybe just a tabano or something, and with you is keeping a steady beat. So that's your kind of introduction. And then everybody sings Apple Tree, maybe clapping the beat. And then you go to the first interlude, which might just be speech, or it might be speech and body percussion, or it might be just body percussion, or it might be speech and rhythm instruments, unpitched percussion, or it might be just unpitched percussion. Then you go back to the Apple Tree song. Then the next group gets to do whatever arrangement of the words that they chose, whether it's speech, whether it's unpitched percussion, whether it's body percussion, or some combination of those. Then it goes back to the song, so on, so forth, and ends with everybody singing the Apple Tree song with sticks, right? So you have all of this big old rondo happening where students have used the pieces from the song to create 8 beats, probably got together with another group to have like their own class or their own half of a class or whatever it might be, 16 beat thing that they also chose how it was going to be performed. So maybe it's apple tree, tree, apple tree, apple tree, or maybe they're hand clapping with friends. I mean, it can get as big as you want it to be, right? And then it's going back to the Apple Tree hook, if you will, and then going back and forth between those things. So that's level 1. Then within level 1, within level 3. So within all of that, there's a lot of room to also vary how the hook or how the main song Apple Tree exists as well. So maybe when one class is done with their interlude, then they're also the class that's going to sing Apple Tree. And so they decide like if they're going to play the game or you know what I mean? So there's all of these different ways that you can create this form. And you can also have the students take what they've done in class and plug it into a performance experience based on the arrangement that you've created all together. So I told you that was going to be super ridiculously fast. But the idea, so we started with that Apple Tree song. We thought about how to take down those itty bitty elements into just we just began with 4 beats for level 1. Then we turned that into 8 beats with level 2, right? In pairs and small groups, that can grow into 16. Then we added in different ways, different modes of music making on top of speech. And then we put that together with the main game. And then we added more people, more possibilities, right? And so there's no reason that can't be an informant. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, but it's apple tree over and over and over again. So the downside of that is you've been doing apple tree till the cows come home,
right,
with however many like first grade classes, but the parents haven't heard it over and over again. And the kids have, well, maybe they have at home. But the kids have heard it, but not as many times as you have. So I think what happens, at least for me, when I kind of start out teaching, I was like, oh, informants, like we're gonna do the same songs, coming from my performance world background, we're gonna do the same songs we've been doing like over and over and over again, like it's just a game. Well, the parents have never seen it, and they've never seen it go from this simple game to like, oh wait, it grew into this much bigger thing, right? And that can also be coupled with a student like sharing like, this is the first phrase of the song, apple tree, apple tree. We learned that was toddy ta, toddy ta. We know that we can also change it to be tree, apple, and that's ta, toddy, ta, toddy. You're going to hear us use all of those different patterns and what we share with you today, and then you do it, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there to do whatever type of music making they want to do. The students got to choose. They went back to kind of the foundational thing that you started with, and it presents an opportunity to create this large-scale form that is easy to share and easy to plug in some advocacy with. Because just like my student, thanks for making me tell that story, just like my student in methods course this past fall, parents will be like, I didn't know my kids could do that, right?
Right.
Like, and having it explained to them in that way or shown to them in that way is a pretty special thing.
So something that I want to yes and on top of this, I'm just thinking about like facilitating all of this. So you have your 30 minutes and you have your 4 first grade classes. Okay, let's imagine that you want to have in your gymnatorium or your NPR, your whatever you're using. Let's imagine that you do this and there's one class on the stage area and everybody else is seated in their groups. This class, this class, this class for my total of 4 classes. This group on the stage is the one that always sings the song and plays the game. This is just, and just as an aside, this is like another option to repackage everything that you've said, like just to show how flexible this idea is. So the group on the stage is always the one that sings the song and plays the game. And then in your interlude, as your rondo different sections, you walk up just like you would normally, exactly, you would normally walk up to a group in the classroom and they would do their thing. Now you walk up to the edge of the stage or whatever, and you're looking at just this one class and you do the echoing back and forth, or rather, I should say you would do the improvisation thing back and forth with this class. Then we go to the main class on the stage. They sing the song, they play the game. You go to the second class and do the improvisation back and forth. Back to the main class. Then go to the third class and they do the improvisation back and forth. Then they do it. And then to the audience, you do it. And the audience does the improvisation back and forth with you, right? So then everybody's involved. And if you have 4 different classes, you create 4 different kind of the same template-ish arrangements of Apple Tree and Duérmete mi niña, and I don't know, whatever, pick your other 4 songs, and you just rotate who is on stage, right? So everybody gets their moment in the spotlight, but everybody else is also involved, that kind of thing. So that to say, I love this idea because it's so modular. You can rearrange it in so many different ways. Yeah.
And it sounds, I mean, if you think about that at the end, it sounds really like that's a lot like how do you get there, right?
Yeah.
But then like scaling back kind of past the 2 past episodes that we did, like think about it. Every time I got on here to share, I'm like, this feels like pretty simple, right? And it is if you take those small chunks to kind of get there. So the level 3 for me in my brain is coming up with kind of that large scale form. And there's not to say that that's the only way to do it. Like maybe it's maybe there's an ostinati that joins in, with the song one time. I mean, it's all up to you and your kids and how you want to put it together, right? And the possibilities are truly endless. So
yes, yeah. When I do stuff like this with like any amount of audience participation and any amount of like audience doing one of the jobs that kids are doing, it is so cool for kids to see their adult, whether that be a grandma or an aunt or a cousin or like whatever it is, like their adult doing their pattern with them. And then the idea of, I mean, the whole point of what you're sharing is like kids take something and they can do something with it and then present it to an audience. And back to your, performance background as a trumpet player yourself, you're like, oh, it's just like a little apple tree song, right? But there's a whole world in apple tree. And our job as the music teacher is how can we package this in a way that makes sense so that people in the audience know the magic that's happening on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Love it. Love it. Okay. I'm going to do something kind of similar. Let's talk about kind of a similar idea, moving back to this idea of rhythmic building blocks and just kind of changing things around and messing with the order. And I'm not sure what version of Tideo you use. I kind of use all of them squished together, just depending on the day and if I can remember which one I used, in the last class, that kind of thing. But let's just, for our sake right here, we'll sing it as skip one window, Tideo, skip two windows, Tideo, skip three windows, Tideo, jingle at the window, Tideo, 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 jingle at the window, Tideo, 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 jingle out the window, Tideo. Great.
I don't know, Victoria. I don't know if I can do it.
She can't get over it. That's fine. Insert whatever version of Tideo you want to use because honestly, truly, they are like a rotation in my brain. I don't remember which ones belong to which specific version, et cetera, et cetera. Is there fa in it? I do all of them all the time. I mix them up. I know it's not very, I think people would have opinions about that, and I'm sorry. Okay. I have some options here for us. I have some options here. I might say that we are going to skip one window, skip one window, skip one window, skip, skip. Skip one window, skip one window, skip one window, skip, skip. Skip one window, Tideo, or if you're Anne, pass one window, Tideo. And this would say pass one window, and this would say pass instead, all good. So this is, Anne, back to your idea of there's like a little interlude in between the game and the next round of the game. With something like this, I wouldn't even say, I would make this simultaneous imitation where I don't even stop and say, everyone echo me, here we go. I would just start saying a pattern. And by the time you say it 4 times in a row, students have picked up the pattern. Okay, so this is one option. And by the way, this is, now we are in level 3. So this is an activity that is not our first experience with rhythm arranging and rhythmic building blocks. And so because of that, I would not necessarily go through a whole big spiel about sequencing this. So let's just zoom through. Students have had some opportunities to move these cards around on their own and create some different 8-beat ostinato patterns. Next question for you, many classes later. Would you like to, number 1, speak your ostinato? Let me go over here. You would like to speak your ostinato. You would like to play your ostinato on body percussion. You would like to come up with movements to your ostinato, or you would like to come up with a little melody to your ostinato, which we know kids can do very naturally if you don't force it and say they have to use specific solfege, and they'll come up with something cool like Belle Diana Snow. Right. And I have kids, when I have kids do this, like they come up with really cool melodies just on their own. Okay, so your first option, speech. Second option is body percussion. Third option is movement. Your fourth option is a vocal melody to whatever ostinato arrangement you have created. And I'm not going to make you do it on the spot, but which one would you like to do?
Speech.
Speech. So you're holding up one finger. Great. And look around in the room at all of the other students holding up a 1. That is your group. So there are many ways that we can have students get in groups in our classrooms. One of the ways is, say, find a group, right? And then the default is I'm going to find a group of people who I like. If I ask you to do it with your interest instead of just with your friend group, that can kind of break up the groupings a little bit, so we have a different grouping of kids instead of always with your best friend all the time. And you want to introduce our friend?
My 13-month-old. He's here for the party. Apologies in advance. He was not doing great on the side. So here we are. Continue.
Okay. We're trying to make it quick so that we can so that he can be happy. Okay, so now we have all of our groups you've chosen if you want to be in your group based on your interest of speech or body percussion or movement or singing. And by the way, Anne, if I have like 13 kids who all want to do speech, then you just break up into smaller subgroups from there. And then the other thing that will happen is kids will have two things that they want to do. So you can hold up two fingers. Like if you wanted to do speech and you want to do movement, you can hold up the one finger and three to show your preference. And then you just get to choose, from there. So it's not a very, very, very structured thing in that sense, but it just helps kids kind of find a different way of getting a partner that's not me choosing and it's not them just always with their friends all the time. Okay, so then I have this worksheet here on the board and I have 4 cards for our 4 rhythm cards that we've been working with. You're going to create your arrangement here. And then remember you decided that you were going to do like your speech, your body percussion or whatever it is. You're going to create some things for the audience to listen for because eventually we'll share this out with the rest of the class. So this box over here on the back says, check our work. Here's what the audience should listen for. And this is when you write down like what you want people to notice about your arrangement. And then if this is something that we're extending over 2 class periods, and by the time, in a 15-minute segment, by the time you get into groups and start, brainstorming and rehearsing stuff like that, it's going to bleed into the next class. So here's what we did today, and next class we will. So this helps students just kind of keep track of their thoughts so that next class they don't show up again and they're like, well, I don't remember anything that we did, right? They're kind of writing a note to their future selves. Okay.
The baby found a drum. Shocker. Okay, so what I love about this is 2 things, more than 2 things, but 2 things I want to point out is the rhythmic building blocks that you used from the song, right? So from our conversation at the beginning of today's conversation about like finding things that you can extract, right? And it just so happens that this is a great like Ticka Ticka or Tiri Tiri or Takadimi song, and using Jingle at the Window or whatever the building block was for that is a great way to do that. What I also love is that the students were able to self-select what they wanted to do, right? So, and that helped determine their group. And so again, we're using the same building blocks, but the different levels. Can you hear that?
Yeah, but you should keep going. It's fine. It doesn't bother me at all.
He found my box of rhythm instruments. So there's bells now. Anyway, so oh my gosh, my brain is mush now.
No, I think it's distracting you more than it's distracting me, for sure. There's no question. Yes.
No, it's fine. So anyway, what I love about this is we're using the same vocabulary, but just again thinking about the modes that we're using in a more expansive way. There's more options, so there's different levels for the students to self-select, because odds are you've done a lot of stuff with speech. So if a kid says 1, that's where I want to be, that's where they feel the most comfortable, versus a kid who's going to compose a melody is going to feel like they're ready to go, right? And so that gives you insight as a teacher too, in terms of like some assessment things where you might need to do pay some more attention, do maybe some reteaching, or just some more focus to help those other students feel a little bit more confident. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it, Anne. This has been fun. So we've started with like very small parameters of our rhythm arranging. And then we've kind of just like expanded and expanded and expanded and expanded. And then hopefully what we have kind of talked around enough in these, and I think we have, is that what we have been doing today is just like such a tiny piece of everything that these ideas could be, right? Like we've talked about three possibilities with each of us. But this is a very expansive conversation. The idea of rhythm arranging can take you far and wide.
Yeah. And I want to just like focus in on the point that like level 1, level 2, level 3 is not necessarily, I don't want to say difficulty, it's just more options, right?
Yes.
Like I think for both of us, it was more about kind of like zooming out on like what it meant to actually, like, the concept of arranging is the same, just the choices that we give students, there's more there, right?
Yes.
So again, so there's that option for like the self-selection and creativity.
Absolutely.
So,
Love it.
cool.